Previously on Sister Wives, the fragile and complicated world of the Brown family unraveled further, with every conversation, every glance, and every unspoken resentment revealing just how deeply divided the once united clan had become. And as Kody wrestled aloud with the question of whether love could still be salvaged, he exposed not only his own doubts, but the broader collapse of the plural marriage experiment that had once been held up as a defiant example of commitment, spiritual calling, and family unity. He had said more than once in hushed tones of defeat, and yet also with a strange determination, that he still imagined a possibility, some slim chance, that perhaps he and one of his wives could make it work, could carve out a relationship amidst the ruins of mistrust and hurt. But in the same breath, he was reminded, by Janelle in particular, that countless conversations had already ended with the firm statement, "It's over. We are not compatible. We cannot carry on." This ongoing clash of hopes versus realities encapsulated the wider story. For decades, Kody had thrived on the complex energy of 4 marriages, believing in the spiritual legitimacy of polygamy. Yet now he was forced to face the stark truth that he was no longer a plural husband, but a man whose connections had fractured to the point of near estrangement. Each wife had taken her own path, Christine pursuing joy in remarriage, Janelle building independence in North Carolina, Meri retreating into her bed and breakfast in Parowan, and Robyn left as the only partner still by his side, while Kody oscillated between anger, denial, grief, and a yearning for reconciliation that often came across as too little, too late. The conversations revealed how different their needs had become. Janelle asserting her independence, Christine declaring she no longer felt any divine calling to plural marriage, and Meri admitting she wanted companionship but refusing to settle for scraps of affection. All while Kody, torn between religious conviction and emotional exhaustion, asked whether anyone could accept him in a monogamous frame, knowing full well that this had never been his dream. The struggle between ideal and reality played out not only in words, but also in the silence between them. In the awkward co-parenting arrangements with Christine, where communication had been reduced to mere texts about pickup times for Truly. In the strained politeness with Janelle, where the occasional conversation was overshadowed by years of tension. And in the near-complete breakdown with Meri, who admitted openly that their attempts to talk almost always led nowhere, leaving her stuck between loyalty to her past and the awareness that her future must take a different shape. The sadness of these conversations was not merely about 2 people falling out of love. It was about an entire family system that had once been built on the conviction that plural marriage was divinely ordained, that sharing a husband could bring spiritual strength and communal unity, and now all those ideals lay in ruins, replaced by bitterness, loneliness, and a sense of betrayal. Kody himself, though often defensive and quick to blame his wives for disloyalty, stubbornness, or lack of kindness, seemed increasingly aware of the wreckage he stood in, even if he could not always admit it directly. He described his own emotional life as a roller coaster, confessing that some days he felt vengeful, consumed by anger at how things had turned out, while on other days he was overtaken by softer impulses of benevolence, wishing for kindness, forgiveness, and a return to something resembling harmony. Yet these oscillations left the family in limbo, because reconciliation cannot come from half-hearted gestures or alternating moods. It requires a consistent willingness to rebuild trust, and trust had long since collapsed. The wives, in their own ways, articulated this clearly. Christine emphasized her relief at being married to David, stressing that unlike the volatile first year many young couples experience, her remarriage as an older woman was marked by stability and a refusal to waste energy on petty quarrels. Although she acknowledged that grief, particularly the loss of her son Garrison, had cast a long shadow even over this new joy. Janelle, practical as ever, noted that she missed her son every day, and admitted that some nights the grief overwhelmed her when quiet moments brought back memories or unexpected photographs on her phone. But she also channeled her energy into relocation and projects in North Carolina, immersing herself in the prospect of creating a homestead and flower farm alongside her children and grandchildren. Meri, often portrayed as the loneliest of the wives, spoke candidly about her life at the B&B, trying to enjoy independence, finding solace in cooking for grandchildren, and even daring to venture into speed dating, though she confessed the idea was stressful, noisy, and alien compared to her hope of meeting someone organically. Robyn, meanwhile, remained tied to Kody, but even she admitted that their monogamy was not a choice she had actively made. Rather, it was thrust upon her when the other wives departed, leaving her to grapple with a marriage far more demanding. Because with no other wives to share his attention, Kody was now fully present, something she simultaneously longed for and found overwhelming, as his accountability to her alone created new tensions. The loss of Garrison, however, transcended the usual conflicts and forced everyone to face their vulnerability. His passing brought siblings together at the funeral, created memorial plans on the new property, and inspired conversations about mental health and the silent struggles that too often go unseen in large, chaotic families. It was a tragedy that momentarily stripped away the petty property disputes and marital squabbles, yet also revealed how deeply fractured the family had become. For even in grief, the estrangements remained. The awkward silences continued, and the distance between fathers and children, mothers and former sister wives felt insurmountable. The property dispute over Coyote Pass lingered like an open wound in the background of every discussion, symbolizing not just land and money, but the larger question of responsibility, fairness, and loyalty within the family, because for years the dream had been to build a collective future there, each wife with her own home but united by shared space. And now that vision lay abandoned. Half-cleared land littered with belongings from Janelle's RV life, fencing materials, and the debris of unrealized promises. While Kody, feeling abandoned by his wives, lashed out by claiming that they expected him to clean everything up, despite what he perceived as their cruelty towards him, even though Janelle insisted that much of what remained was in fact his responsibility. This tug of war over ownership and accountability exposed the deeper truth, that the once glorified patriarchal structure no longer held, that wives were no longer willing to carry emotional or physical burdens for a man who had failed to show up for them in their most vulnerable moments, and that polygamy, stripped of its religious idealism, could look disturbingly like inequality dressed up as spiritual duty. Christine admitted openly that she had once believed herself divinely called to marry Kody, that a spiritual witness had confirmed it to her, but she now no longer felt that pull and even described considering a spiritual divorce, taking cues from Meri's own quiet decision to formally sever those bonds, reminding viewers and perhaps reminding herself that faith evolves, that what once felt sacred can later feel like a shackle. Meri, for her part, continued her journey of tentative independence, simultaneously mocking the superficiality of speed dating and yet gamely attending an event in Salt Lake City, joking about how men might react to her quirky laugh and even imagining the rejection as a filtering process rather than a personal wound, showing both vulnerability and resilience as she stepped into the unknown world of dating in middle age. Her humor, often self-deprecating, underscored her deeper longing not just for romance but for recognition, for being seen and valued in ways she had not felt in years within her marriage to Kody. Meanwhile, Robyn clung to her role as the last wife standing, though her expressions betrayed worry that Kody might one day feel diminished in her eyes, particularly as he confessed that losing wives within their religious framework was akin to a walk of shame, as though his masculinity and spiritual authority had been undermined by rejection. The irony, however, was plain. For years he had chosen favorites, allocating time unevenly, often leaving some wives and children feeling like afterthoughts. Yet when those same wives asserted themselves and left, he was devastated not simply because of lost companionship, but because the departure reflected back on his identity as husband, father, and spiritual leader, exposing the fragility of a role he had once assumed was unshakable. Against this backdrop, Christine and David shone as a counterpoint. Their laughter and playfulness, racing Maddie across the yard, joking about confidence and ego, dreaming together about building a life on new property, illustrating that marriage could be a source of joy and partnership rather than competition and resentment. And their happiness stood in sharp contrast to the bitterness still lingering with Kody. Their plans to create a flower farm, a barn, and gardens in North Carolina not only represented a hopeful future, but also carried with them the profound symbolic act of memorializing Garrison, transforming grief into beauty by dedicating a garden to his memory, ensuring that his presence would never be erased from the family's story. In this way, the Browns' saga revealed itself as not just a tale of marital collapse, but a meditation on legacy, how children remember their parents, how siblings grieve, how property becomes a battleground for unresolved emotions, and how the ideals of faith and family can both sustain and suffocate when tested by time, betrayal, and tragedy. Hi, Meri. My name is Thomas. Hi, Thomas. This is something I've never done before. What about you? I've done this a lot. I'm actually on my fourth wife. Not at the same time. Hold on. At what point in the conversation do I say, oh, by the way, I have been divorced from a man who had 4 wives, but my family has 18 children and I only have 1? Like, would you actually tell somebody on a 6-minute date for me? That would take up the whole 6 minutes. I don't know. There was a guy that I was talking to. He found out who I was and he was like, I just can't continue talking to you. This is not something that I'm even interested in or open to. And it was very hurtful to me because I was a polygamist. You're not interested in pursuing a relationship with me. First date is not I was a polygamist, third wife. You don't go into that on a first date. That's too much information. That date will be over and you will never get a second date. Been there, done that. If I were to ever have another relationship, it's going to be somebody that I know for a while. And they'll know. Because, it's not a big secret. It was like my first real big realization that that's going to inhibit some people from even wanting to start talking to me. In my brain, there's something I want maybe more than you do. You're talking about sex? Yeah, a polygamist is getting enough. It's going to be really tall grass here in a minute. We definitely envision this property as a gathering place. Hopefully we can put some small little cabins eventually for everybody to stay in. But in general, we want it to be a gathering place. Janelle, I would love to have this be where the whole family gathers. Absolutely. I also want my house to be the place where everybody gathers. Just saying. We could have like some sort of a gang war between Janelle and me, who's going to get more people. She's winning right now, by the way. Okay, this is exciting for Maddie, Caleb, and Janelle. It seems like a lot of work, but I am excited for them, and it's all of their dreams, so it's perfect. There is nothing in North Carolina that I'm even interested in. This is raw land. There's really nothing appealing here. Christine is not a homesteader. She just wants to live in her very comfortable house in the suburbs. Look, I'm not trying to compete about who gathers where the most. I feel like having a really great place that is big enough to accommodate all of us. That's the goal. Cheers to the dream and cowboy. Say cheers to the dream. We're just going to cowboy this. It's the attitude of we're going to figure it out as we go. Steven said we can pile it all up and do big, huge fires. Oh yeah, like that one over there. Aspen and I think we should invite all the siblings and recreate that photo of Garrison with his maniacal eyes. Yes, Garrison loved fire. There's this picture and they're all kind of around this bonfire and there's this scar standing in front of it and he is just excited. You can tell on his face. So I think they're laughing about trying to recreate that one. Robyn and I are going out to dinner tonight. It's always a good experience for us. It's always a good time to have a conversation and talk. Will you cut that up for me? How did you do that? That's a pretty hard cheese. Let me use your knife because I was licking mine. I'm okay with your licking. Oh, that sounded bad. I just had a lot of fun with what you said in my head, but I want to be a gentleman. You okay with my licking? You can lick. You'll lick the rest of it. You're teasing me. No. There's still a little bit right there. Oh, that's fun to tease you. You get cute. You got all shy. Kody's a lot more showy, even in front of the kids. And I'm like, whoa. I come across sometimes as snobby, but I'm actually just shy. A relative asked if we were still into plural marriage. What did you say? I don't know. I wasn't quite sure what to say. I didn't want to speak for you. I feel like if this is still something that's a part of me, then wouldn't I live it? Kody and I never chose to live monogamy. It's definitely not something I ever would have chosen for myself. You turned down qualified, worthy individuals for marriage because they weren't going to live plural marriage. That's true. I had marriage proposals. I had people I dated. I could have lived monogamy just fine. Some guys in different times said, I'd marry you in a heartbeat. We were friends, talking, hanging out with our kids together. But I was like, I plan to live plural marriage. And each one of them said, that's not something I want to do. If I had been pursuing you and didn't have other wives, how would you have treated it? I would have said the same thing to you. Do you see a value in it for us in our future in any way? I don't know what space Robyn is in, and I don't know what space we'll be in 2 or 3 years. I almost feel like turning the table and saying, do you want to get back in plural marriage? If there was somebody really supportive who wanted a relationship with me, as well as with you, not just you, and we had a guarantee that it was going to be wonderful, that would be something to truly consider. I think you and I share something very special, but if it's not duplicatable, it could put us at risk. There's something wonderful here. Well, yeah.